morning, everyone, or evening. Welcome to the Duke Alumni Professional Development Webinar, The Art of Mentoring. My name is Susan Gordon, and I'm the Senior Director for Career and Professional Development here at Duke Alumni. I'm going to put in a minute my email address in the chat. I would love to hear from you about what you are looking for in your professional development and what Duke can do for you. So please feel free to reach out to me directly. We have a great panel for you here today. People who I know personally have developed mentors and mentoring relationships in their lives and in really smart ways and have thought about this topic in great detail. The panel will also be moderated by my colleague, Gerald Harris, who is the Senior Director for Campus and Student Engagement, who is no slouch in this area. I think the last time I checked, he had a group of 12 Duke students who he regularly meets for mentoring conversations. What we're hoping you'll get out of this conversation is some insight into how mentorships are developed. I think a lot of us think that getting a mentor is a matter of just asking somebody or even being assigned to someone, and then you're mentored. And I think what we'll learn from this panel is that there's an art to being mentored, and it's something that you can learn to do and something you can practice, but that it requires some work on your part. So our plan for today, we're going to have a panel discussion with our Gerald and the panelists. We'll also, towards the end, we'll have a Q&A directly for the panelists. So as you listen, please submit your questions for the panel using the Q&A feature of this webinar. And make sure that you submit it to everybody, to all, not to a particular panelist, so we can all see them. We'll be collecting them and we'll leave time for them at the end. And then finally, we want to share with you some exclusive Duke resources that you can use to find mentors and develop those relationships. So you saw a couple of those highlighted in the intro slide, the Duke Alumni Network and Ask a Blue Devil. And we also have a guide to mentoring that we'll send you at the end of this webinar if you stick with us till the end. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gerald.
Good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know that we have people that are coming in all across the world to hear this amazing conversation. And what I would like to do now is introduce our panel. And Victoria Bright, Dr. Audrey Chang, and Trey Scott. So how's everybody doing? Let me see.
Very good, thank you.
Everybody's good, everybody's had a good morning, had breakfast or whatever you like to do as you wake up.
Well caffeinated.
And navigate the day. First thing I would like to do is have you all introduce yourselves to our participants and who you are from Duke and what do you do, and yeah. And so we can start. Yeah, we can start with Victoria. Yeah.
So I went to Duke for my undergraduate degree, then worked in politics and higher ed. And currently I'm at the Fuqua School of Business as a first-year student getting my MBA.
Hi, everyone. I'll go next since we'll do this alphabetically by last name. My name is Audrey Chang. I am currently the Director of Partnerships and Professional Development at Duke University, where I work primarily with the students in the quantitative sciences, so the mathematical sciences, data science, and some units within the Office of Information Technology. I received my PhD from Duke in biology more years ago than I care to mention. It's probably in the bio somewhere, but I'm thrilled to be back here. And prior to coming back to higher education, I worked primarily for nonprofits and cultural organizations.
And I am Trey Scott, graduated from Duke as a public policy major back in 2015. And I work at Microsoft, starting in our education sector, and then eventually into financial services. And now I lead a few of our commercial teams across the country. And I actually live in New York, hence me being on mute every once in a while because lots of sounds this early in the morning. So great to be here.
Great, great, awesome. So as we think about this definition or this idea around mentorship and what it is, tell us about just your experience through mentorship as being a mentee, and how this practice of mentorship has shaped your journey, and from even from a professional and a personal standpoint. And so I guess we can start with Trey. We can go. We started with the top.
Yeah.
We could start with Trey.
I would say for me, mentorship is all about intentionality, and I have a number of mentors. I have my own personal board of advisors, and I started working on as a senior at Duke, or I guess technically as a junior. And those people evolve and change, and for me, they're in all types of different places where I need mentorship, right? So there's the professional folks. Many of them are Duke alumni, but some of them have no connection to Dukes. Many of them don't even work in my field, right? And so a good example for me would be having a mentor as I was considering a new job or changing career paths or industries and things like that. But also I have a mentor who's important to me as a Black male in corporate America, right? And how do I navigate this space? And as the world is having conversations now more publicly and openly that we were sort of having behind closed doors, right? As I was trying to navigate it, how do I then express that at work, for example? And so I think that when I think about mentorship, it's who I am at the time and place in my life in that chapter, and how do I find people who can complement and guide me down a path that I see myself, either that they've already gone down or they're going through and they're a little bit ahead of me in the race, right? That's why my mentors sort of vary in age and background, and also sort of ebb and flow as I change as a person.
Awesome. Thank you, Trey.
So it's really, I think, like one of the most interesting lessons that I learned as a emerging professional, and now a fairly, not so emerging professional, is I spent many years in academia with the idea that I was going to become a research scientist at a university, hopefully very much like Duke University. And so I had a set of academic mentors in that space who were committed to my success, because in many ways my success was directly tied to their success, right? When you think about the way scientific endeavors are set up, that my papers published are their papers published, and we all get more grants together. And so that relationship was very different than what I experienced once I left the academy and was out in a professional work environment, where all of a sudden I wasn't necessarily assigned a mentor, or that I wasn't choosing a mentor. But to Trey's point, I really had to think about who are these people with whom I wanted to cultivate a network of relationships around me. And what is it that I value about them as individuals, as professionals, and where can they supplement the kind of learning that I might not have had in my career at this point? And so for me, that space really was about female leadership, and to some extent minority female leadership, because I kept working in these organizations where the guys in charge were always white men. And we saw a lot of women in sort of entry-level jobs and middle management, but it seemed to be like there was that, the proverbial glass ceiling. And so for me, cultivating mentors were really about finding women in technology, women in leadership, who could help me figure out and navigate some of the future barriers, but also understand like how I can set myself up for success with that intentionality behind it, right? These relationships are really here to help serve as guide rails and some guideposts for the future.
Thank you.
I think for me, both of my parents kind of came from technical fields. So my father was trained as an engineer. He's a state grad, for any state Wolfpack people on the line. I'm still a Dookie, but I still have state in my heart. But my dad was trained as an engineer, and my mother was trained as an architect. And so for me, pursuing paths that were kind of outside of those areas, I didn't have a lot of people who my parents weren't as familiar with them as some other folks were. And so for me, finding mentors and getting more exposure to other pathways was critical because I just didn't have that in my house. And so I kind of viewed mentorship as finding more information about career opportunities, what the possibilities were for my career, and also just building connections, right? Like I kind of think of mentorship as building connections all around with the Duke network all around the globe, right? And so just finding ways to build connections and relationships with folks, and finding ways to take away little tidbits and pieces of information and gifts from the people who have kind of gone before you.
Awesome, thank you. So as we think about just these relationships that you are building, and I'm pretty sure you all find out, so I know Victoria knows this, and I know Susan knows this about me, is that I'm really Southern and I talk in metaphors and use quotes all the time. That's just the way I communicate. I don't think I do a lot of full complete sentences, but that's completely okay. That's just the way that I go about life. And when I think about this idea around just mentorship and just using a plant owning or just farming, a farming idea around this metaphor, what you won't water, well, what the quote, what you won't water won't grow. How do you continue to feed this relationship? Because we know that mentorship in a lot of ways in all ways is a two-way street. Some people come to a surprise, a shock of that at the end of the day, but it's a two-way street. So how do you grow that mentorship? How do you create that? How do you help each other expand on personal and professional as a mentor mentee?
I would say, I think for me, Gerald, when you talk about your plant metaphor, right? I think the mistake most people make is that they overwater this plant. I mean, it's a lot of water. So that's all the water. And I think it's people confuse frequency of contact. It's like, oh, that means like this is working, right? If I talk to you every week, can we make this a bi-weekly or can we make this a weekly? And I'm like, hell no, why are we talking so much, right? And same for me as a mentee. Like, I think what it needs to be is, again, if we go back to plants, every plant has a different need, right? Mm-hmm. And so as you think about that, there's sometimes a revving up and a revving down. And what you owe to your mentor is your own self-reflection to understand, what are we trying to get to? And what do I need to get there? And then how can I be helpful to them and what they need as well? And deciding what that frequency looks like and cadence and quality, and holding true to that, right? So I have a mentor now who we have also a friendship. Therefore, there's frequency. There's a lot of talks, right? We talk a lot. Yeah. But then when I truly sit down and have the mentor hat with her, that's probably twice a year. So the feeding is that a friendship is what keeps us going and connected, and allows me to have the capital then to ask a favor or ask a question or have her help me in certain ways. But then you have other mentors who I need a lot of time up front, and then that's really it, right? And it's expectation setting as well, so that you're holding yourself accountable and them accountable to what you need. But the slippery slope is confusing the fact that if I'm not talking to them all the time, then they're going to one day just forget about me and this isn't working. I don't know if, Audrey, Victoria, you faced that, but I think that's sort of my experience.
I definitely feel like, I love the word cultivation around it, right? Because this isn't necessarily something that you owe each other, right? This idea of mutual investment, I think, Trey, you touched upon this. And I really like the idea of creating opportunities for us to share areas of interest and using that as a way of helping them get to know me, especially in those initial stages of the relationship. And I think about this in many ways, like as somebody who coaches students on their professional development as well, when you're setting on this relationship journey with somebody, you're really trying to engage them on content, on things that are valuable to the both of you. And the little reminders that I try to use are when I spot an interesting article that I think might be appealing to the person that I'm working with, this potential mentor or a mentor, I try to send that along, because what it says to them is that I am also invested in their interests. It's not just, can you help me all the time, but I'm watching out for you as well. And I'm opportunity spotting. I'm thinking about things that maybe we can even set as a dedicated agenda item for our mentoring sessions. And that's really helped grow, I think, both the personal and the professional intersection of the relationship. And like Trey, and I'm sure like Victoria, many of us have the relationship with our mentors that are somewhat of a meld, a hybrid of professional and personal, right? For most of my, I would just as soon send something slightly inappropriate and funny to one of my mentors as I would in LinkedIn or Medium article on something that we would both find valuable. And that space is, you know, I love holding that space, but it is work.
Yeah, and I'll even take it a step back to like, how do you create that relationship in the first place before you get to watering it? I think for me, it's all about looking for people who have interesting experiences that I might want to know about and learn more about. I don't know that I've ever reached out to someone and said, hey, can you be my mentor? It's more of like a reaching out to them to say, you know, I noticed that your background is in X and you've worked at this company for whatever long time. Like, I'm really curious about learning more about X, and could you set up time to talk more about that? And usually that's how you start building that relationship and talking to them. And people love to talk about themselves. It's no matter what they say, themselves is their favorite topic. And so by having that conversation with them, and just like Audrey said, after that, kind of keeping the relationship a little fresh by sending, you know, articles as they come up, but also being confident with the fact that, you know, some people will be lifelong mentors to you, and you'll find yourself going to them again and again for advice. And some people you'll only meet with once. And that's totally okay. People, if it's not a natural connection, and many times it won't be, many times it will be specific about a certain point in your life or a certain topic in your life, that's totally okay. So just, you know, building that relationship from the start of being someone just interested in learning about another person's experience. And then over time, as needs arise, going back to that person to say, hey, I remember you talked about this. I'm currently in this situation where I'm recruiting for this job. What do you think about this company or this industry? Would love to kind of, you know, walk in your mind a little bit and get some more feedback. Can we set up another call? But not making up things, making up reasons to chat with no real reason. So anyway, that's a lot to say that, you know, be intentional with what you're asking from your mentor, but also realize there's some relationships that you're going to establish that are one and dones, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, people are in our lives for reasons and seasons, you know. So
Gerald, can I ask Audrey to just expand a bit on that opportunity? What did you say? Opportunity spotting, Audrey? Is that how you phrased it?
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, and I think a lot of it is, you know, we know that transition times between careers or between career opportunities are a little bit shorter now. And one of the things that I've noticed in the language that a lot of the professional network that I have uses is there's a moment when they're signaling a little that they're looking for something different. And it's interesting when you're the mentee to hear that, right? I think one thing that it always tells me is that there's a trust now between us. And then also that they might be starting to seek some reciprocation of what they might have given me in the past. And so the opportunity spotting here is a little bit, for me, about, oh, how can I support this interest that they're expressing? Or they might be interested for me to offer up, like, who do I know, who's in my network that might also be of utility to them, which makes it sound so cut and dry and so transactional, but this idea that perhaps, you know, they're looking for a little bit of support as well. And so how do you identify those moments and start giving back a little bit?
So you're talking about a scenario like, oh, sorry, bye, Victoria.
Oh, I was just going to say, just to tag on to that, no matter who especially if I'm meeting with a Duke person, I always say, I'm going to friend you on LinkedIn. If you ever want to be connected to another Duke person in my network, just let me know. I'm happy to do so. Because at this point, I'm talking to a lot of people who are further in their career than me, but you always want to still provide, offer to help them if they ever need an introduction or something with someone that you know in your network too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Trey, I think you had a comment, but before I lose the train of thought, is the Duke Alumni Network is so, I think, generous and giving that it's actually a fantastic thing to be able to offer up, right? Because we're here, we're in this community because we're invested in each other's success. And I think we actually have a reputation for that. And so to be able to offer up front and make that, take that step forward towards somebody is actually a really powerful moment in the relationship, I think.
No, my only comment, I think Victoria hit on it, which is I was thinking, I agree with you. The opportunity spotting is just a phrase I've never heard or used, and I'm definitely stealing. I'll give you some credit. But I think that for me, I do find myself trying in the back of my head to look out for what's of value to the mentor, and maybe one day I can be able to provide that. And as to Victoria's point, as you progress in career or just in life, right? As I get more lessons or meet more people or learn more, because if you even move away from the professional, right? Like, you're buying a home, and how do you even do that, right? And as you learn more there, how do I then become of value to them on something that's totally different, right? So this person provided something for me here, but eventually they have a need to introduction or something like that. But I was trying to figure out how much of that you can set up front versus as you progress, you learn the value you can provide. I'm sure it's a combination of both, but Victoria, you really answered that part too, which is like, there is a way to sort of set give the space to say, hey, if you ever have a need, you can come to me, right? In this particular way. So that's interesting to me.
And I add that to every follow-up email that I have. Like, if there's ever anything I can do for you, please let me know. Because it isn't, you took some time out of someone's day if you're talking to them, and time really is money. So, you've probably taken some money out of your pocket. So being able to offer your time back to them or anything that they need is a good gesture.
Awesome. You kind of got to this, Victoria. We're just talking about the whole thing about meeting new people can be interesting, to say the least. How do you break that ice, with a new person or a new mentor prospect? And how do you kind of how do you make that ask? When is the perfect time to make that ask? Or is there ever a perfect time to make that ask?
And ask for them to mentor you?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm currently I'm a current Fuqua student, so I'm reaching out to a bunch of people right now. But what I have just been doing is I haven't been asking for jobs. I've been reaching out and asking people to talk to me about their experience. And I actually have, because I am looking for a job, I actually have a Google Doc that holds all of my mentorship conversations in it. And I have a set of questions that I have set up to ask people about their experiences. And I keep them all, this is more than y'all probably want to know, but for anyone looking for mentorship strategies, and I keep them all in this Google Doc. And so my kind of, I'm breaking the ice is I already have a set of questions to ask people. I usually start off with something like, hello, how are you? And then I get back into my questions and make sure that I'm making the most of their time, and then also making the most of my time as well. But yeah, just reaching out to them and asking about their career and information. And usually what happens is, especially if they're Duke people, they'll say at the end, if you have any follow-up questions or anything like that, keep me as a resource. And that's sort of what I take for my next steps. If I need to come back to them or want to ask for advice or what have you, and I've done that, that's what I go back on. Like I said, I have never really, I don't know that I've ever really said to someone will you be my mentor? But that mentor relationship has been established because I keep going back to these people and they keep watering pouring into me and giving me advice and suggestions and offering to meet with me. And so that's how I've established mentors. But I don't know if it's ever been like we've signed a mentor contract. We'll do X and X for the forever, the future. But that's sort of how they've kind of created like natural relationships.
Yeah, I think I'm on the other end of that spectrum, Victoria, because I'm like, I would like you to be my mentor. Here's my expectations. Here's what you expect from me. Yeah, I'm pretty formal about it because I want to make sure like we are on the same page. And also like what I owe you as a mentee, right? And that you are signing up for this. So you can opt out. Let's make sure, that way you don't use it. But I think you're right. I mean, obviously there's tons that fall sort of more organically, but even the ones that happen organically, I try to at least formalize the expectation piece. But I think to your point, like in general, it just comes out to like, upon meeting people, when you think about breaking the ice or forming that conversation, if you are intentional around the outreach, hopefully the ice breaking and all that part won't be very difficult because you know exactly why you're talking to this person. And I think that's often the missed opportunity is that people try to use mentors as a very exploratory phase of things. And I'm just Trey's opinion. I think people owe their mentor, they owe it to their mentor to do their own self-reflection before getting in front of them. So you self-reflect with your friends, with your mom, with your professors. And then when you get with your mentors, though, now it's time to be intentional. Now it's like, I know generally I'm moving in this direction. I've used my compass, I'm going north. Can you help me navigate the path there? What I sometimes as a mentor get calls on is, I don't know where the hell I'm at. It's dark, it's pitch black. Where am I going? Who am I? And I'm like, I feel like you should talk to somebody else about this because I don't even know you, right? Or I know you, but only in a small capacity, and I can't help with all of these things you need help with. So I don't know. I think for me, it becomes very formal because by the time I've gotten to the point where I want you to be a mentor, I've already done a lot of homework, right? Yeah. And so I'm not as organized as Victoria in my life, but I love the intentionality behind the process she's talking about.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about this process. This process I've heard so much about that's with you and this idea of people contacting you. You've become pretty famous around here about. It's a big deal.
Like complaining, they're like, "Oh, this man is crazy." No, I think for me, what you're referring to is I probably have had, I don't know, 75 Duke students or so reach out over the years. And it is really a process that I did myself. And it was very career focused, right? And it's to alleviate this idea, you get the phone call, they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. What should I do? I'm lost. Should I go into finance? And I feel guilty for it. But I have all these things in my mind. And I'm like, okay, let's pause for a second. What are we working through? Because the reality is for me, I sort of stumbled into my job at first. And what I needed to do was to take a step back and figure out, what do I want? I had a very unconventional Duke experience. I sort of had an insecurity that I wasn't an engineer or science-based individual. So I felt like, do I have any skills? Like, what are my skills? And sort of had a freak out because I wasn't going into the field that I studied, right? I wasn't going to work on the Hill or doing work on policy work. And so for me, it was trying to figure out, how do I navigate this? What do I write out? And how do I become self-reflective to understand where I have gaps in knowledge, and mentors or people along the way can help me with that. So when students call me, or when anyone really calls me, not just students, alumni, friends, I have a very specific process that I go through every time. And it's 3 rounds of process. There are 3 questions you have to answer. And then people call me back with the answers. And then I just criticize their answers. And I just rip them apart because people aren't being deep enough, right? So they're like, I want to make money, or like, I want to live in New York. And I'm like, okay, great. Is it New York or bust? Because if it is, well, there's only so many jobs. There's a lot of jobs, but you won't take a job in Austin. Or is it, I would prefer to live in New York, Okay, how much money do you want to make? What field do you want to work in? What do you actually like? Do you like big groups of people? And it's those things that people haven't really thought through that make it very hard. And I think people fear that being specific means they're going to have limited options, but instead it's called being focused. And so there's this like weird fear around being specific, but you want to be as specific as possible and just trust that there are a lot of things in the world that you can do, that you're capable of doing, that you're qualified of doing, and that being intentional and focused will not limit you. It will accelerate your path to it. So that is my long-winded answer into like, that is really the process that I bring people through and try to help them hone in on.
And I think Trey's like touching on two different things. Like there are mentorship conversations where you're trying to have someone give you advice or give you insight that you can apply. And then there are like exploratory conversations, right? Yeah. And in many ways, you know, as a business student that's kind of still figuring out things, a lot of my conversations are more exploratory, where it's more about me asking that person questions about their experience and their opportunities, and then compiling that information and me reviewing it later to kind of make decisions or determine next steps. And that's different from like the mentorship opportunities where you're reaching out to someone and you're like, you know, I want to learn more about you, and here I am. This is where I am. What do you think about what's going on here? And getting their advice. And so there's two different like ways, probably more ways, that you can take a conversation with someone where it's more focused on them, or is it more focused on you? So just keeping that in mind as opportunities. I can really relate with students reaching out. I used to work on the Hill. I used to work on I won't get into politics, but I used to work on the left, and I used to have a lot of students reaching out to me from the right, asking for advice on how to get internships with different administrations. And I was like, I can't really help you. If you've done your research, you would have known. or having students reach out who are unsure politically. And so it's kind of like, I can tell you about my experience. I can tell you how to get where I got, but I don't know that I'm always the best person to help you walk through your internal crisis about your internal views. So keeping that in mind, and again, keeping in mind also that your mentor's time is valuable. And so when you reach out to them, you want to be specific about what your intention is. If it's exploratory or if it's more like, how can you help me with my life? And being intentional about the questions you ask and the amount of time you use on their calendar.
Awesome. We have a few more minutes before we break out into some Q&A. As we think about just this world of mentorship, if there is 1 to 2 things that you feel like these participants can take away from this conversation and remember to put in their tool box as they navigate this, what is that thing, or what are those things?
I mean, I love listening to Victoria and Trey talk about this, right? Because they echo a lot of the sentiments that I already have, and how I actually coach students who are sometimes beginning their job search or looking to make a transition. And the 2 things that I would say is, and they both said this much more eloquently, is really do your homework up front. And then the other part is, okay, 3 things. Don't be afraid to ask, right? We've all made the ask of other people before. And so most of us know that there's an opportunity to pay that back or to give it forward. And then the third thing really is make this easy for them, right? You're helping them set the expectation about how to interact with you by telling them, I want this to be an informal exploratory relationship. I want this to be really about helping me navigate a hostile work environment, because I know this has happened for you as well. And then so I think about it in terms of when people ask me for my time, how do they do it and what makes me respond? And then I try to mimic that back. So if people are just like, hey, can I have 30 minutes because I want to talk about making a lot of money, I'm probably a little bit less likely to email you back and say, absolutely, let's set up that time so we can figure out what's in your head. I'm much more likely to respond if you send me a note that says, When we talk about exploring tech opportunities in firms that are, are well known for their diversity initiatives in these kinds of areas, right? Help me make the time valuable for you, because we all want to feel like we're contributing as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Audrey.
I don't know if you're going, I'll go. Yeah, I mean, I think don't be afraid to reach out. Like, we've all been told no before. You miss no shot that you don't shoot. So, always I reach out, and if someone doesn't respond, they don't respond, and keep it moving. So definitely, reach out to whomever you would like to have insight from. Make it about them, wanting to learn more about their experiences. That's usually how you can get them to start the conversation, even if you move it into mentorship later. And yeah, be prepared. Do your homework, for sure.
I'm glad Audrey and Victoria went first, because I'm going to call them both to be my mentors after this. So now I know.
I was calling you. Yes. I'm calling all of y'all.
For all of us.
Yeah.
I think my two things would be, one, spend 5 times as much time knowing yourself as you do knowing your mentor or the person you want to mentor, because it's the self-reflection questions that are hardest to answer. I think the second thing is, I think the second one is be expansive in what mentorship can look like and what areas of your life you think you need that in. So I tend to tell people, don't over pivot on career mentors, when sometimes the parts that make you unsure about your career are other things in your life, right? And you're trying to navigate this like uncertainty that has nothing to do with career, but you are projecting it into that job. And because especially in the US, we think of our career and job as our identity. Therefore, when you have an identity crisis, you sometimes turn to your job to fix it. And so I think you think about that part. So for me, like calling a friend of mine and like, okay, I need some mentorship on how to be a better feminist. And I recognize I shouldn't put this on you. I need that. I'm turning to you for this. Like, how do I help with this, right? And so there are other places in your life that you can have mentorship for times that has nothing to do with career, that has nothing to do with any of the other stuff, right? But it's just as important. And so I would say reflect. That's why the self-reflection is important, so you can find those gaps.
Awesome. That's great. So let's jump into some of these questions that we have. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll work through and try to get to them. With those questions, we can start out, and I know Susan's back on too. How do you know if you're asking too much from a mentor?
Well, with any luck, actually, I hope the mentor you guys have the relationship where they'll tell you, right? In so many words. I see some nodding here, but when you have that relationship of trust, the ideal situation is they would actually say, right now, my plate is full and I might not be able to respond to you. And then if you're super lucky, they'll perhaps offer another resource. But for most of us, I think we experience the other situation, which is they just stop responding to you. And that little, perhaps unintentional cold shoulder is a good sign to read, at least for me. I'm like, okay, well, it's time for some space for everyone. I'd be curious to hear definitely from Trey and Victoria on your thoughts on this too.
What do you think, Victoria?
I don't know. Are you asking too much? Maybe you are asking too much. I don't know. I don't have a good succinct response to that one. I'll defer this one to you.
Yeah, I agree with Audrey. I think they tell you, or I just say, just ask them. Is this too much? Right? Just trust that they will be like, yes, please leave me alone.
Please stop texting, emailing.
Yeah.
So here's one from the chat, which, people do this. how useful do you find sending life update emails to your mentors and the network? So is that a good thing, or is it too impersonal? Is it weird? Is it a great idea?
I send life updates related to things we talked about. So if I talk to someone about like a internship opportunities that they may have, or, you know, right now I'm talking to someone about careers in their industry. And so my update to them would be like, hey, I've decided to go in a different industry, or you know, I've decided to go with this company for my internship. Thank you so much for your feedback. Would love to stay in touch, or something like that. Like that may be an update that's related to what we're talking about. I think those updates are cool. I think people overestimate the need to stay in contact with these people, you know, whoever you're talking to. Like if you reached out to them a year from now and you hadn't talked to them since then, and they're a Duke alum, most of them are going to be like, you should write them, hey, we talked a while back, wanted to circle back with you, da 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 da. Like it's not, this is not a, I'm not a gardener, but this is like, I don't know, Lazarus plant that just comes back to life when you need it to, in the time of need. I would call that my Duke alumni plants, where you don't necessarily have to water them every week and every month, but at some point when you want to circle back and you have like specific questions for them, you usually can reach out to them and they will come back to life.
Another question that came in, so, you know, a lot of you talked about doing your own exploration and your reflection first, a lot of that, but then someone said, well, isn't part of the mentoring process explanatory? So like your friends, yourself, you know yourself, your friends and your family, they kind of know you. When sometimes you want a fresh perspective, someone who doesn't know you at all, who can listen to your thought process and help you reflect. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I think, Audrey, I'm thinking actually around something you said earlier, around the specificity around, hey, like I'm looking for, what was the example? I'm looking for tech companies that specialize in this and this, right? That to me is still exploratory, right? That's not, I have all the answers, but it is, I know what I'm looking for. So the example I always use, Susan, is it's okay not to know what you're looking for in the dark, but you at least need to know it's square, it's squishy, and it kind of feels like it's a little fuzzy, right? So then you know when you grab it. Otherwise, if we're completely in the dark, then this is unhelpful for both of us. And so I think that it's okay to have some exploratory conversations, but one's not at the ground level. We're kind of at floor 3 at this point, right? If we kind of know generally, I'm looking for this, or you ground it in, hey, I'm a bit lost. For me, for example, like when I remember when I was graduating, Ferguson was like burning down, and I was like, oh my God, I have to call. I've got to talk to someone Black because I'm a sellout and I'm going to go work in corporate America. I have to quit my job. I have to do everything. I was very, very much quit my job. And so I got connected to a friend's dad who's a Duke alum. Actually, he's not a Duke alum. His daughter's a Duke alum who left banking to then start all these nonprofits and like change the world. So I call him. I'm like, I know it. Tell me now. Quit my job. Hire me. I'll be your right hand. And he's like, do not quit your job. I'm like, what? Did you not hear what I said? I'm going to be a sellout. You need to tell me to quit my job. And he really walked me through, I think, a much better plan of impact and what I should be focused on and what matched to me. But I think that's a good example where like it was very much exploratory, right? And he really guided me through a lot of things without knowing me and gave me a new perspective. But I still knew the baseline problem I was trying to solve. He just told me that's not the real problem. You need to go work on these other things, right? So I think it's better to have a point of view and have it changed by an outside person, or influence, I should say, than it is to just come and hope that they will give you this magical answer, right?
So Trey, following up on that, there are 2 recent questions. I think you've sparked a lot of interest. Someone wants to know, what are your 3 questions that you ask potential mentees? And then a second person related, what is your process for doing your own self-reflection and research? So you can start, Trey, and others can jump in.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I say number 1, I usually use a curse word, but I won't use it this time. Susan and Joe know I have a potty mouth, so I'm trying to be careful. Number one is, what do you absolutely love about a job? And it's qualities of a job, not the job. So like, I love working with groups of people who are really smart, right? Or like super intelligent or really passionate. It's about being incredibly specific. So usually people are like, I love tech. I'm like, great. What the hell does that even mean? Right. And so when I talk about the 3 rounds, the first round is meaning you have to get deeper. You have to get deeper. So what do you absolutely love about a job? For me, one thing was I love work. I love having a sense of autonomy at work. Right. Then the list, and it's the top 5 things. You need to put them in order. Sorry, top 10 things. You need to put them in order. Second thing is, what do you absolutely hate about a job? Like, makes you curse, you complain to your friends. It is the worst part of a job. One of my top ones was being told what to do, right? And being boxed into something. And it's the top 10 things. You have to write 10 because the first 5 or 6 would be really easy. Like boom, 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 boom. By the time you get to 8, you're like, and it forces you to actually think, right? It's sort of like when someone's like, what's your biggest weakness? Everyone prepare for that in an interview. So in interviews, I'm like, what's your top 4 weaknesses? Because by the time you get to the 4th one, you're like, damn, I didn't get that far. I don't know. Right. And so that's why you need 10. And then the third category is, what are your non-negotiables? Top 5 things. And that could be pay, right? So for me, it's like, I got to pay my bills. I didn't have a family. Oh, so I have a family. I didn't have support from my family financially. It was important to me to be independent. Therefore, I had a clear threshold that I had to be able to hit. And it's no harm, no foul. This is the truth. And so there's that. Some people have to live in a certain city. So what are your non-negotiables and top 5 of those? And you have to prioritize them, because as jobs come in, you need to be able to funnel through them and say, is this really my priority? So if you tell me it's New York or bust, but I tell you this dream job in Austin, are you going to say no? And if the answer to that is like, yes, well, then you're right. The location's top of your list. But if your answer is like, maybe not, then it's like, well, how married are you really to New York? Or is that just conceptually you think you're married to New York, right? So those are really, and it's a 3-round process. And it's just mostly me getting deeper and deeper and asking like, why? Until the person finally gets to like the core reason. Victoria, Audrey, anything on your process? I'm sure that both of you are twice as smart as I am. So I'm sure this is me winging it.
The only comment that I have is, it's not actually, I have this ridiculous card deck, which I'm sure many of you have seen. It's the career drivers card deck, right? Which I think a lot of professional development people, career coaches, we just have these things on hand. But I find it as a really useful tool, because what it helps you do, it helps you work through Trey's questions, for example, but with some parameters already set around it. And actually, I will be the first to admit, I bust these things out sometimes in periods of crises, right? I use them not only to think about the next career that I might be interested in, but I also use them to reflect a little bit on what's going well for me right now, and where can I do more improvement? Where do I ask for additional help? Or where might more resources make me happier at the work that I do? So just a dumb little card deck that I've actually made into a digital form for students.
That's awesome. Yeah, maybe you all can share these. There are a lot of, oh wow, there are so many great questions here. So some that are very specific, though. I think that people are like, tell me what to do, which is good, right? So someone said like their company got acquired and they're in a big company now that has mentoring and networking, and relationships are much more important, and they've been assigned a mentor who is a senior on the leadership team. And like this person is saying, how forward can I be with my mentor, is stating my career aspirations. Can I just flat out say I want to be VP in the next 6 to 8 years, and I want to know what you look for? Is that the kind of conversation with an assigned mentor too, not someone that you just you found on your own?
Victoria, not to put you on the spot, but is that like, I know you've talked about sponsorship before too. Do you think that qualifies for like someone to kind of understand the difference between the mentorship and sponsorship?
Yeah, it depends on the company and how people get promoted to VP. I mean, this is a very specific example, right? In some areas, you have to be sponsored. It depends on your industry and how that all works. So I don't know enough to say about that. I would say in this particular situation, I might not, especially if she's a VP, I might not be like, I'm coming for your job. but I might be like, how did you get there? That's interesting to me. I see myself wanting to have a long career here. And just kind of wanted to know, like, what are the things that I can be doing now to like position myself for success? And it's interesting, the piece about the being acquired by a company that is more focused on relationships. Every job you have is focused on relationships. They're probably not telling you this when you walk through the door, but everything that you will get moving forward, for the most part, unless you are working on an industry, a construction line, and it's all about being able to complete pieces in an amount of time, like your success depends on your ability to have relationships with people and get people to buy into you and like working with you, and be invested in helping you succeed. So it's very important to get into the habit of building relationships with people at your office, at your job, and going out for coffee, having conversations, learning about them, so that you can be prepared for whatever comes your way, and that you have advocates who are looking out for you. That's really critical and important. Even if those people aren't formal mentors, you know, having those relationships will help you succeed at your job and get promoted.
I think we have one more quick answer we have time for. A lot of consciously networking activities, especially in professional schools or in that vibe, seem to be superficial and selfish. How would you advise to go a bit deeper and bond and really connect with someone meaningfully instead of just looking for what they can offer you?
I mean, go ahead, Audrey.
No.
I was just going to say, I think really quickly, I was actually going to point to something you said earlier, which is I think people over pivot on this. Like, it's so transactional. Well, it doesn't have to be if you make it not, right? If you go into something saying like, I am someone I will go look for value to bring someone else, right? And to discuss with them and anchor yourself on like, what does Susan need from me, right? How can I be helpful to you? And oftentimes people will mirror that back to you, right? And so I try to think, if I go into a network event, I try to think less like, what's my agenda, and more like, all right, what do I have in my tool bag that I can go help people with? And if I can make if I can get 10 connections where I'm helpful, trust that if one day I want to like lean into them and ask something, that at least I've already provided them value. And then we're starting from a place where I have some capital to lean on, right? And then therefore you're not doing this uncomfortable, like, how do I get value out of you? And it's more like, how do I bring you value? We'll talk about me in 2 years when I need this, right?
Yeah, and I think there was also a comment about like, how do you make these connections when you classify or you think of yourself as an introvert? And I will be also, it's not super obvious, but I'm actually highly introverted, right? When I'm not doing this kind of event, I'm usually hiding in a room with a book with the door shut in an empty house in the woods. I mean, it makes me sound like a psychopath, but Victoria's like, yes, we're on the call with a psychopath. But I think the key here is that even if you're introverted and you prefer to spend a lot of your energy kind of holding on for yourself, for me, these networking sessions are most successful if you go into it with a mindset of curiosity, right? It's not just about, is this company going to be a good fit for me? Or am I going to be able to get something like financial support from this company at this event? But who here is interesting? Who can I click with? And almost set it back a little bit to, how can I be of service, like Trey said, to this community of people who have taken the time to be gathered here? And curiosity for me goes a really long way, because then you start learning all the interesting little things about people that you might not, and that gives you those threads to continue to pull on as time goes on. I'm not.
And I know we're wrapping up, but I just want to say, like, hot take on transactional mentor relationships. It feels transactional because it is. Okay, you wouldn't be reaching out to this person if you didn't need to know anything. You wouldn't be in the room meeting people, having a good time if you didn't need a job in 2 years, you know? So if it was transactional, it might feel slimy, but like, welcome the transaction and do it in a, like, embrace it and do it in a way that's classy. I loved working in DC because I feel like in DC, everyone realizes it's transactional. You're all on the same page and you go about your business appropriately. I feel like outside of DC, it's more like, well, let me pretend like this is not what it is. But it is. If you help me, I'll help you. It feels kind of grimy because that's not how you're raised, I think, in school. But if you embrace that and realize, like, that's what it is, and go to these events and you have your goals in mind and reach those goals, but do it in a way that's classy and respectable and respectful to other people. You know, you don't want to come off like too strong that you don't care about the people at all, but you do want to, you know, have your goals and achieve them.
And at some point, you're going to be in the same position to provide those same type of opportunities for somebody else that is contacting you in the same manner.
Yeah, that's a great way to end it, because we, just to end it, first of all, thank you, Victoria, Audrey, Trey, Gerald, amazing. So your wisdom and your time, and thank you all of us for joining us. And we're going to quickly just show you, we're going to put in, we're going to share a link, I think, with you in the chat for a resource you can use, a Duke resource for mentoring. It's kind of like a Duke mentoring guide that pulls it all together, including a worksheet if you're the kind of person that likes to plan and lay out your conversations like Trey. And then also we're going to show you, we have a slide. Yeah, perfect. Again, just to remind you, Duke has 2 tools that are amazing for those quick transactional conversations that can become something more. So that's our goal, right? There's the Alumni Network, which is the exclusive Duke network, 180,000 alumni who are just dying to help each other. And then Ask a Blue Devil, which is kind of a newer tool. That's kind of a one-to-many. You just fill out a form, you kind of type in your question or your request, what you need, what you're trying to understand. You hit send, and the system will do the work for you. It'll use artificial intelligence to match your question with alumni who are ready to help you, and you'll just get emails from people within like a week. You'll get a couple emails from alums who are saying, hey, well, let me share my advice. Let me open my network to you. So those are 2 tools. It's transactional, it's short term. We call that flash mentoring, but hopefully with the guide and with this conversation, we'll also give you some ideas about how you take those one-offs and develop them into something more meaningful and start really building your community.